Filip Turek, the admirer of Hitler, who's well known to regular viewers of Prague Pulse, said this.
Taky mi přijde zvláštní ta naivita toho, že si lidi opravdu myslí, že tu revoluci udělali studenti a ne Gorbachev, KGB a spol, protože je jasný, že to bylo řízená věc.
So basically, according to the Führer lover, the democratic revolution in Czechoslovakia of 1989 was basically just a KGB-directed theater production where naive students didn't have a single clue of what they were doing, while intelligence masterminds, on the other hand, pulled the strings. The whole thing, according to Turek and others, was basically just a carefully orchestrated operation to swap one set of communists for another. Great story, right? Too bad it's complete horseshit. Unfortunately for all of us, even people much more intelligent than Filip Turek apparently still believe in it, so it's worth it to dive in it. I'm Jan, this is Prague Pulse, and today we're dismantling this incredibly popular conspiracy theory using actual evidence, as we always do. Let's establish the facts first. On November 17, 1989, tens of thousands of students marched in Prague to commemorate a student killed by the Nazis in 1939. The protest was actually initially allowed even by the communist authorities in Czechoslovakia, but when the crowds deviated from their approved route, the police brutally cracked down on them in the center of the capital at Národní třída, and things quickly took an anti-regime turn after that. Within just days, massive protests erupted as a result of the police violence. Theaters went on strike, workers joined in, and the so-called Civic Forum was formed to coordinate the opposition to the regime. And by November 27th, so just 10 days after the protests started, 3/4 of the population in Czechoslovakia, so 75%, actually participated in a general strike. And the communist government in Prague, watching Poland and Hungary liberalize and the Berlin Wall that fell just days earlier, they just simply couldn't hold on. On December 29, dissident playwright Václav Havel actually became president of Czechoslovakia, and symbolically, the revolution had been over. Just 42 days after it began, and barely a window got broken in the process. That's exactly why it's called the Velvet Revolution. It was incredibly peaceful. But that's also why the incredible speed and peaceful nature plays against us, because that's where the conspiracy theories come in. The claim basically goes like this. Ludvík Zivčák, who was an agent of the Czechoslovak secret police, the STB, supposedly infiltrated the student march on November 17, led the crowd into a police trap intentionally, then faked his own death to create a martyr, and the logic was that the rumor of his supposed death would later spread, and people would be so pissed off at the regime that the regime is killing our children that they would overthrow the commie hardliners in power and instead install Gorbachev-friendly communist reformers. The mastermind behind all of this was supposedly General Alois Lorenz, the head of the STB, together, of course, with his puppet masters at the KGB in Moscow. Plus, conveniently for those spreading that conspiracy theory, the archives later revealed that high-ranking KGB officers really were present in Prague on November 17th. So, the students, the strikes, Havel becoming president, according to them, all of this was just part of the script to replace hardliners with reformers, but still communists. Brilliant, right? Except here's the thing. Literally everything about it screams incompetence, panic, and oh shit, what do we do now? Let me explain. Let's start with November 17 itself. While this supposedly great operation was unfolding on Národní třída, the question to ask is this: where was the supposed mastermind, head of the STB, General Lorenz? He must have been coordinating from a command center, right? Or at least watching via closed-circuit television, because after all, he was just conducting a large-scale coup, so he must have been watching. No, actually, you are very wrong. He was having dinner in the Prague city district of Břevnov with a KGB high-ranking commander. And what were they discussing? Well, according to historian Michal Stehlík, they were actually signing cooperation agreements between the STB and the KGB for 1989 all the way through 1995. Let that sink in. These supposed puppet masters were actually planning for 6 more years, at least, of collaboration between their secret police forces on the exact day that their master plan would supposedly end the regime. And the other KGB agents, yes, they were in Prague, but they were shopping because it was Christmas coming up, of course. Nothing says we're executing a sophisticated coup quite like browsing Prague stores for souvenirs or gifts. Either this was the worst intelligence operation in human history, or, and I'm just spitballing of course, maybe they had no clue what was actually about to happen. Lorenz eventually drove downtown to check the situation when we heard the first news. He looked from the embankment toward Národní třída, but he missed the actual violence. So later, he told General Secretary of the Communist Party Miloš Jakeš that things had gotten a bit tangled, but were basically calm. A bit tangled. That's how the mastermind described his own coup. It's basically like Napoleon calling Waterloo a minor setback. Now, let's talk about Ludvík Zivčák some more. Remember, he was the star of this operation. Yes, he was a real STB officer. Yes, he was at the demonstration on November 17. Yes, he collapsed during the police crackdown. But investigations later concluded that his role was actually only marginal and without any connection to the critical events. Medical experts determined that his collapse, which did happen, was actually genuine. He literally fainted from the stress of the situation. Because yes, even people who serve the secret police and torture people actually can faint from time to time. Now, when STB officers later transported Zivčák to the hospital, they were actually terrified that his cover would be blown, and they tried to do everything they could to hide his identity from the doctors and to keep all of that quiet. If this was all staged to really create chaos and cause a change of regime, somebody maybe forgot to tell the STB officers involved that this was going on. The rumor about a dead student actually came from a lady who simply saw the guy collapse on the street and wanted to be famous. Now, if this was all controlled, really, the script went off the rails immediately. On November 17, there were some 15 to 50,000 students, depending on whom you ask. 3 days later, we had 200,000. On November 24, the Politburo of the Communist Party resigned. On November 27, we had that 75% general strike. And December 29, we have Václav Havel becoming president. 42 days from the student march to complete regime change. Now, the STB had been planning for this option with an operation called Clean, a wedge that was designed to divide the opposition and prevent a case like this from ever happening. But it failed spectacularly. The opposition actually immediately unified rather than splitting, and 10 days after November 17, the STB was still trying to unsuccessfully infiltrate the Civic Forum and gather dirt on the leaders. Ask yourself this question. If they were really controlling it, as the conspiracy theory claims, from the inside, why try all of this to infiltrate from the outside? You would suppose that they would already have reputable sources within the Civic Forum who would actually be running the show. But no, the STB was doing all they could to get someone in, and they failed. And Václav Havel, by the way, the symbol of the entire revolution, wasn't even at the November 17 demonstration. He wasn't even in Prague. He was at his country home, far from the capital. Instead of focusing on November 17, which was supposed to be just a small march approved by the communist authorities, remember, the opposition had been planning for a larger event on December 10th, which is the International Day for Human Rights. They were not even supposed to be in Prague, and Havel wasn't even there. Now, here's the smoking gun that actually destroys the whole conspiracy, if we haven't done that already. The general strike on November 27. See, the STB didn't actually organize it at all. They simply monitored it. They were waiting to see if people would actually show up. And when they saw the massive turnout that came, and they realized that whole 75% of the country had just told them to basically fuck off, only that's when General Lorenz gave the order to start shredding documents. Let that sink in. The supposed masterminds of this operation only decided to destroy evidence after seeing how massive the general strike was and how much it succeeded. If they'd planned this whole thing beforehand, as the conspiracy theory says, don't you think that they would have shipped the documents away to Moscow, for example, well in advance, or Or, better yet, they wouldn't need to destroy evidence at all because, according to the theory, they were only replacing one group of loyal communists by another group of loyal communists. Yes, they would be different a bit, but they would still be loyal to the regime and to Moscow. This is the behavior of people who've completely lost control, not people who somehow orchestrated the outcome. And as for Gorbachev orchestrating all this, here's the reality. Gorbachev couldn't control anything at that point anymore. Poland had semi-free elections. Hungary was opening up. The Berlin Wall fell on November 9th, 8 days before Prague. The entire Eastern Bloc was collapsing like dominoes, and the USSR itself was near its collapse as well. The idea that Gorbachev had any capacity to micromanage a sophisticated operation in Prague while his own empire at home was burning is just absurd. In 1988, at a meeting of Eastern Bloc intelligence chiefs, the KGB, Stasi, the StB privately admitted to themselves, over vodka of course, that they lost the party and control and that nobody was actually directing them anymore. They knew a whole year before the events that the end was already coming. And knowing something will collapse and orchestrating its collapse are two very different things. Now, you may be asking yourself, why this myth won't die? And the answer is actually simple. Because it's just comforting. It's easier to believe in puppet masters than accept that totalitarian regimes simply can and do collapse from time to time. The theory actually serves multiple agendas. Former communists can claim that they played 4D chess instead of just admitting that they simply lost. Populists or stupid people like Filip Turek can use it to undermine democracy because their claim is that someone else is always there deciding for you anyway behind the scenes and you're powerless to do anything. And the Russians, of course, will use it in their disinformation campaigns to delegitimize 1989 altogether. Yes, there are ambiguities. Zivchak was there and he was a strange guy. Some commies retained influence even in the new regime, but that in itself isn't evidence. It's just reality being messy, because reality is sometimes messy. The actual evidence, KGB generals shopping for Christmas presents during supposed revolutions, StB having to infiltrate movements that they supposedly controlled, documents shredding after realizing that they'd lost, points to one conclusion and one conclusion only. The Velvet Revolution was genuine chaos that the regime simply couldn't contain. Filip Turek's stupid conspiracy theory isn't just wrong. It's ignorant and it's an insult to every single student who was brutally beaten up by the communist police. Every worker who walked off the job on November 27. Every single dissident who'd spent years building foundations for regime change and almost died in the process, like Václav Havel. By claiming that this was a KGB plot, Turek and others are trying to steal the revolution a second time. Not from the communists, but from the normal, average citizens who'd made it happen in the first place. Plus, he's showing how incredibly ignorant and uneducated he actually is, because he doesn't know a single thing about our history. If you found this valuable, please subscribe as always, and a massive thank you goes to everyone supporting me already on herohero.co/PraguePulse. You are the one making this possible. Until next time, I'm Jan, this is PraguePulse, and stay curious.